Hey YouTube, Lionheart here, and on today's video, I'd like to talk about Klee, how I built her, how I'm playing her to have what I think is the most fun I've had yet in the game with any particular character, and some recommendations on alternatives from our build that you can do if your resources are perhaps a bit more limited. So let's just dive right in. So Klee is a super love-hate relationship I've noticed for most people. People either really like her or really hate her. And I think like a lot of the criticisms I've seen around her is that her attacks and animations feel really clunky, right? So if you're auto-attacking, and this is me auto-attacking as fast as I can, you can see there's some pretty huge animation lockouts. And similarly, if I'm trying to move, it takes that long, right, to move. And we'll just do that one more time. You can see how long it takes to do it. So I feel like a lot of people experience that and then just kind of like rage quit Klee. And she's actually a lot more smooth than that. And I'll give you 2 tips to make her smooth. First, you can animation cancel her basic. So even though her normal attacks like this, you can actually attack this fast. See this? Now, you're not going to do this a lot because she's basically rooted in place while she's doing that. And as you know, because you've been playing Genshin Impact, you can't really just stand still for long periods of time. But it can be useful to just get like 3, maybe 4 autos off really, really fast. Or if there's somebody locked down and you're just trying to charge up your 4-leaf clover, which is this little star that'll appear here to give you a free charge attack, you know, that can be a nice way to do it. How am I doing that? It's really simple. There are 2 ways to do it. You can either tap W in between each auto attack, or you can simply hold W, okay? And each time the book disappears, make an auto attack. And eventually you'll get the timing down where you can do it pretty fast. All right, it's really easy to do. You know, it may make her feel a little bit better for you. So that's one tip. All right, the more important tip is actually the second tip I'm going to give you, which is actually helped my gameplay across all my different characters in Genshin Impact, but it's very important for Klee, which is you can jump out of pretty much anything and in any direction you want. So if I'm sitting here auto-attacking like this and I don't want this attack, I can just jump out of it, right? And just jump out of it again. And remember, I'm attacking like all kinds of random directions right now, but if there's an enemy nearby, right, she's going to auto-target to the enemy. So I found that actually jump dodging and jump animation canceling has been super huge for my playstyle. It doesn't consume stamina, and it lets you get this like quick burst of movement, which you would normally get from like a sprint, right? But without having to rely on stamina. It's really useful for making her feel smooth. And it's particularly useful for getting out of her charge attack, which... I mean, you can jump out of it pretty much the second the flower appears. Actually, at the very beginning, I was like jumping out of it too soon. So you can really practice getting out of that. Like, say if you do it too soon, it'll consume your charge. So you need to wait till the flower appears. I'm glad I did that there so that way you could see it. But basically, once the flower appears, you can jump out of it and continue your movement. And so when you're chaining charge attacks at different points, right, maybe you're doing one attack and then you're charging. Maybe you're doing the full combo and then you're charging. Or maybe you're just like, well, I messed it up there again. And then maybe you're just doing like spam and then you're charging, right? Jumping out is really, really important. So I would just practice that a lot more. Pretty much with every character, actually, but especially Klee. And I think that will make her feel a lot better for you. All right. Let's go into Klee's build. So for Klee, we can get into the stats and other things later, but that's going to be more specific to like, hey, did you get lucky on your artifact rolls? Weapon are you running? Those kinds of things. But first, I just want to go into the set. So the set we're running on Klee is Lavawalker. Why are we running Lavawalker? Well, definitely it's not for the 2-piece set bonus, which is pyro resistance. We don't need that, right? Or we're not hopefully not taking a lot of pyro damage as Klee. But the main reason we did this is for the 4-piece set, which increases your damage against enemies affected by pyro by 35%. What does that mean? It means when an enemy has that little pyro symbol above their head, you're dealing 35% more damage to them from all of your sources. Now, that pyro mark above their head can be consumed, right, by elemental reactions. There are some enemies in the game, like slimes, who maybe will almost instantly consume or not even have applied a pyro damage mark. But for the most part, you can pretty much apply pyro damage pretty reliably. And the reason why it's so good on Klee is Klee only deals pyro damage. In fact, this is true for all the current Catalyst users, characters in the game, right? That they only deal damage based on their element. So Klee cannot deal physical damage unless she, summons like the Skyward Atlas familiar. All the damage she's doing is pyro. Her auto attacks, her elemental skill, her elemental burst. And so you're constantly applying pyro damage, which means it's pretty easy to keep this 4-piece set active and gain 35% damage. Well, what are some of the alternatives you could run? Well, you could run, Wanderer's Trope, right? And this gives you 35% damage to your charged attack. Well, that's cool, but, for a charged attack, what about my elemental abilities, right? I want them to deal 35% more damage too. And some people might say, okay, well, what about Crimson Witch, right? Well, the 15% pyro damage bonus, yeah, that's pretty good. And yeah, it's nice that you can get more damage from, overloaded, burning, vaporize, and melt. But you're not really going to stack this well, right? And the reason is that when Klee uses her elemental skill, which is the bouncy ball that then deploys mines, there's actually a cap on how many mines can be out on the field. And so if you're spamming that ability, if you're just throwing it out there twice really quickly, one, you're going to sacrifice a bunch of potential damage, which sometimes we do, by the way. Sometimes it's worth it for the burst, but just know that most of the time you probably want to separate those out, right? So you can get value from the mines. It's only worth it if you're really trying to burst something down, like in combination with a Venti ult, which you'll see us do later. But even if I throw both of those out, right, this is only going to stack up to 2 times. We're not going to get that third stack. And so it's not super efficient, where I feel like this 4-piece set is really meant for characters like D-Luke, who can do, 3 elemental skills really quickly, because his elemental skill has 3 charges on it, right, before it goes on cooldown. So I don't really like the 4-piece here. The 2-piece is fine if you want to pair it with something else, but I figure, why do we care about 15% bonus damage when we can get 35% bonus damage? And it just seems better to me. So yeah, that's kind of the reason why we go this way, and there's probably some other notable things you could look at in terms of artifacts, but that's where I would start. Like things like Noblesse, for example, which is like cool, but restricted to the ultimate, versus like, again, why increase my ultimate damage when I can increase all my damage? You know what I mean? Saying so yeah, so that's why we're doing Lavawalker. And yeah, I'm super happy with the set so far. It took us a little while to find this piece. The pyro damage cups is super hard. In fact, I almost think I recommend this to be your off piece all the time, so you can find like a nice elemental damage piece and then make these your main pieces. But it's we're just kind of working with what we get, and that's how it is. So let's start with the flower. So here's our Lavawalkers resolution, and you can see that just like most pieces, we're prioritizing crit rate and crit damage substat for a DPS character. I think you're going to find that like you're not going to get a lot of BIS pieces, right? So here's something that like I would consider pretty close to BIS in terms of its substat role, not necessarily the values. So like, we use this on Kaching, and I'll do another video on our Kaching build later with Thunder Soother. But here you can see like, okay, this has attack on it. It's got pretty high crit damage. It's got pretty good crit rate, and it's got pretty good energy recharge, right? And everything here is useful. You're going to see pieces like this, but like, to reliably get them is like insanity, right? You're going to get lucky, and hopefully you get a lot of these pieces, and like your luck will vary. There can be somebody who's like, I don't know, 3-4 ARs below me, right, who like has way better gear than me right now because the substats ruled correctly, right? It's just like a lottery draw. So like I wouldn't focus too much on like trying to find this on every piece. Maybe you're looking for stuff like this, but like I think you just pick 1 or 2 substats on a piece that are good enough, and then you take it up. And so that's what we did here, right? We don't care about flat attack. We don't care about defense percent, but it had crit rate, it had crit damage on it, so we took it up, right? And that's what you're seeing happening here on the flower. For her plume, it's kind of the same thing. We had crit rate and attack percent, so we decided to take it up. We actually hit HP, as you can see, quite a few times, but we still managed to pull out 10% crit rate on the plume, so that's great. On the off piece, you've seen this before. We used to be running this on D-Luke. We've now moved it over to Klee. This is, again, a piece that has nice crit rate, a little bit of elemental mastery, a little bit of energy recharge, okay? But the crit rate is the main reason we're running this along with attack as the primary. The goblet has horrible substats. I don't care about any of these. Even elemental mastery, you don't really care about it as much. The main reason I'm running this goblet is because it's a 5-star pyro damage bonus, which means I can get the most pyro damage bonus out of this piece. And in my mind, that trumped any kind of substats that I had here before. Admittedly, we were running like a purple pyro damage bonus piece, and the substats were like, I don't know, it was like 3% crit or something. It wasn't worth it, and so we fed it to this and we boosted it up. I think pyro damage bonus here is really important. And then lastly, we're running crit damage on our headpiece, along with some crit rate, some attack percentage, and I actually think HP percent is not too bad on Klee. She's kind of squishy, and so you'll get some value out of having this as a substat. Let's talk a little more about the headpiece. So we're running crit damage because we're running prayer as our weapon. Prayer, which we can go take a peek at, has 30% critical rate on it, right? Not everybody is going to have lost prayer to the sacred winds, right? So the idea that you're going to have 30% crit rate available to you, may not be the case. You may find that, you have to use a different weapon. Maybe you're using sacrificial fragments. Maybe you're using Widsith, right? Maybe you're using one of the crafted weapons. Whatever you have, may be different, right? And so like if you're running Widsith, for example, which has crit damage, then you're probably going to change the headpiece to be crit rate, right? Not crit damage like what we're running. Whereas if you're running something like, I don't know, sacrificial fragments or Eye of Perception, right? That has this like, let's do Eye of Perception because this is like, it's kind of hard to run. But like Eye of Perception, right? Attack percentage. Then you have to look at what substats you have, right? If your main weapon has attack percentage, you need to look at the substats of the artifacts you get and make an educated decision around what do I need more, crit rate or crit damage. So, if you're running a crit rate weapon, I feel pretty confident telling you go for crit damage here, but it's all going to depend on your particular loadout, okay? For us, this is what works best. All right, and that's it. That's the build. Those are the artifacts we're using. Remember, artifacts are available to everybody. You just go to a domain, you grind it, you hope you get lucky. Some of you will get lucky faster than others, and but this stuff is available to every single player in the game with enough time. Okay, so with that said, that's the build, and I explained kind of how that synergizes with your weapons. Let me go into our specific version of the build, and this is where the video starts to kind of deviate around like, okay, what is the potential of this? I don't have the best substats as you just saw, but I have pretty good substats, and I definitely have good weapons. So like the damage output that I'm going to be able to do is pretty good. It's not going to be the highest that this can get, but it's pretty good. And your results will vary based on your weapon and your substat rolls. Right now, we're sitting on, let's go back to here, 1800 attack. If you go into here, you can see that crit rate is 77% at 125% crit damage. Energy recharge is 112%. We have reduced CD, but this is just from having to animo people in our party right now. This goes away. And then pyro damage bonus is 132% right now. Now, this is stacked an extra 64%, right, based on Lost Prayer. If we remove Lost Prayer, which we can do right now, just so you can see, whatever. Let's put in, we can just switch to this. So if we remove Lost Prayer and then we go to her stats, you can see the normal pyro damage bonus is sitting at 92.2%. So it's increased quite a bit from having Lost Prayer equipped. So if you have Lost Prayer, it's pretty awesome if you're keeping her out. And if you're not, then, it also has a meaningful impact on our crit rate. Notice our crit rate dropped to 47% when we made that change. So I'll show you the potential of both weapons, but I definitely think, if you have something with crit rate, that you can run in the primary slot, that's what I recommend. And most people ask me, like, what weapon should you go? And I think I really like this weapon on her. If you're a Battle Pass player, I think the Solar Pearl would be excellent on Klee. And if I was trying to run something, this is what I would go for. But I think you can also get away with like Widsith or Mappa from the crafting. And it just kind of depends on what you have. All right, cool. So let's go showcase some damage with Klee. We'll go ahead and fight Cryo Regisvine. I'll take you up to a domain so you can see the potential in a high-level domain. And then we can just go, I don't know, maybe just around some like random stuff in the map and fight it so you can just see what she's capable of. All right, and here we are at Cryo Regisvine. I'm just going to go ahead and break him so that he falls over. And I'll focus primarily on using basic attacks and abilities just to give you a really good idea of the damage potential from the build. This way there's no interference from the ultimate, which attacks really fast, and yeah. And there you go. We didn't even need to use our ulti. That's so fun. So there you go. That's kind of the potential of the build on a Regisvine. Alright, and here we are at the Electro domain for artifacts. You can see that we're going to run the hardest difficulty, recommended party level 90, and this is where you go to farm your Thundering Fury and Thunder Soother. We're going to start with Venti, who's going to group up enemies for us. You can see he's at level 60, and that's also going to remove all the weapon stacks on Klee. So it'll give you a better idea of like what the damage potential is if you didn't have like all these stacks that Lost Prayer gives you, but you still had a weapon with critical chance. It's not perfect because the book comes out with one stack and it's going to stack up over time, but it'll be as close as I can get you with the weapons that I have right now. All right. Oh, there you go. You can see all those slimes got grouped, and they all got wrecked, and they're all gone now. Okay, ulti again here, and take out these. Now you have to be a little careful with these like Electro Fatui mages because they teleport around a lot, but two, Klee actually can get baited into targeting their like little birds. You see these like little like fly things, dude? It's really easy for her targeting to get baited into those. See, we're like throwing bombs at them. So just pay attention to where she's attacking, and that'll potentially help you. I think that's going to take her out. That'll potentially help you avoid that mistake. You can see we're going to take a lot of damage here. And so one of the other things that's cool about Klee is if you have her high enough constellation, you can also walk up to things and do stuff like this, which gives you a big explosion, right? But that's only if you have her high constellation. Most players aren't going to have access to that ability. So you're probably not going to use that for most people. Yeah. Well, that kicks in at about C4. And you know, the nice thing about Klee, which I actually should talk about since we didn't go into Constellation before, is, so first off, let me get out of the domain. Our Klee is max Constellation. That has some impact on her damage. I don't think it has as much as people might be worried about. She's a little different than some others. So like, I'll give you an example. Like, let's look at like D-Luke's Constellation, right? If you have D-Luke at Constellation 6, right, he's getting a 30% boost to damage and attack speed, right? That's huge. And then at C4, he's getting an additional 40% damage boost to his E, right? So like you can see D-Luke really changes a lot with his Constellation. Klee's a little different. Even though we have max Constellation, it's actually not as bad. So you do get this bonus. This is like basically a bonus auto attack that randomly appears. That's really nice at C1. If you can get this, you'll like this. But outside of that, you have a defense shred. Remember, she's dealing all pyro damage. So the defense shred is more for your allies than it is for you. You get upgrades to your abilities, right? Everybody has this. So these are actually quite nice. This is your ability to switch out. C4, get it? C4, haha, haha. Ha ha ha. All right, my lame joke aside, though, this actually lets you pull her out and do this big explosion. Though if you're playing 4-player co-op, remember, you won't be able to use this. And in fact, even in 3-player co-op, if you're not the host, you won't be able to use this. So just keep that in mind. And I also find it's a little awkward because, especially if you're running Lost Prayer like we are, you don't really want to pull her out of combat because it resets her damage potential. But at the same time, you know, there's a ton of damage here. And we showed you this in the last domain. And then her last one, the biggest thing here is really energy regeneration. Yeah, 10% pyro damage bonus is nice. It's definitely an increase. It's not the, you know, what did we just see on D-Luke was like 40% or total or something crazy, right? Whatever it was, you know, we're not getting that, but this energy regeneration is very good for your party, and it's noticeable. So they don't give you a specific amount, but I would say that when we tested it with characters who had no energy, the low energy cost people were basically there. They were maybe 5 or 10 energy short of getting there. And the other ones, you know, they were farther away, but it's still a bunch of energy they had that they wouldn't have otherwise. So, but the nice thing about this is you don't really need to C6 her. In fact, I don't think you need to take her past C1. If you can get one duplicate of Klee, I feel like this gives you the most value in playstyle, and the other ones are all nice to have, but they're not required. And I think you can get, even at C0, pretty similar damage output to what you're seeing in this video from us. Now, again, you're going to have varying results based on your weapons, based on your substat rules for artifacts, so that's definitely something to keep in mind. All right, so we did that domain. Let's go ahead and move over to just, maybe we could just fight a few enemies in the world and just show you that, if that's okay. There one is. And I assume the Electro Mage is up there, but we're not going to go fight her since you just saw me fight 2 Electro Mages that were way stronger than her. You can set this up for bombs, and they just kind of scatter around randomly. So you see you can do that until the charge comes up, and then go ahead and avoid the rest. Cool, huh? I think the damage is pretty good. I think you'll be very happy with Lavawalkers. Like, I know a lot of people probably are running other things, but I actually think Lavawalkers will make you very happy. Alright. Alright. Through magical time travel, I have sent us to a different place in the world. And now what I want to do is I'm going to switch the weapon. So I talked about how, you know, I wanted to give you guys an example of like damage potential without crit rate as a substat. So I'm going to switch the weapon over to Skyward Atlas. I don't think... So there's a couple things I guess I should just mention first. I feel like attack percent, you know, the pieces we've chosen for our build are very specific towards having crit rate as a weapon. And so if I'm running an attack percent weapon, the way I'm building Klee's artifacts and the way I'm prioritizing different stats is going to change. But the main reason why I want to show you this weapon is because this weapon is going to not have all of this elemental damage stacking, which like refinement rank 5 for most people is not really attainable. And so I just want to run a similarly strong book in terms of like base attack, even if it's a little lower crit rate, without having the really powerful passive that comes from this. And I'm mainly just trying not to... I toyed with the idea of like leveling up some of these so I could show you them, but I'm very EXP, weapon EXP strapped right now. Actually, I made a video about mining, so if you're also similarly weapon EXP strapped, you should check that video out about crystal chunk mining. But yeah, I'm trying to conserve weapon XP, so unfortunately, this is the best I'm going to be able to showcase. And just, you know, just assume that with other weapons you'll do a little less damage, right? Okay, all right, so here's Klee. I have the right book on her, and I'm going to take her up to fight this guy. Come here, buddy. Where you going? All right, there we go. You can see the damage is still... I think the damage is still quite good, but you could see like in general, I'm just gonna let these hit. We're hitting for less, right? Not like a crazy amount, but it definitely has an impact. Now, let me just go over. There's one more we can do, and I can see if I can actually do a better job of keeping camera on the numbers for you. Probably easier for y'all to watch than it is for me. This is from something I defeated earlier. It's probably easier for y'all to watch than it is for me to see it while I'm actually trying to avoid attacks, but I'll just give you one more comparison point. Ooh. Well, there you go. All right. So yeah, I think you're going to be really happy with Lavawalker as your build for Klee. It's what I recommend. You know, when I'm recording live and hanging out with you guys, right? When like people made a joke of me. They're like, "You say we too much." Well, I say we because like all the progress I'm making, I do with a lot of you live on Twitch, right? I don't feel like I'm ever playing the game by myself, other than when I'm recording a video like this. I feel like I'm always playing with everyone who's hanging out in the Pride. So it's just super cool. So sorry if that's like a quirk that kind of drives you crazy. I got that comment a lot in the D-Luke video, and I'm sure I did not do a great job of trying to avoid it in this video. But the general idea is like I'm not playing alone. And so when I'm theory crafting and I'm talking about how should I build Klee, you know, I get a lot of input from you guys, and I think we collectively landed on Lavawalker as being a good option, and I'm super happy with the results. So yeah, I encourage you to build it out. Just kind of in summary, remember that whatever you decide to do for your headpiece is going to heavily depend on your weapon. If you have a crit rate weapon, you can afford a crit damage headpiece. If you got a crit damage weapon, you're going to use a crit rate headpiece, and there's probably some scenario where you use attack percentage, most likely because that's the best you have available versus, you know, trying to optimize how your build works. It's really good. You'll be really happy with this investment, and you'll have a ton of fun. Make sure to practice your animation cancels, jumping and moving around with Klee. It makes her a lot more fun. Don't worry too much about constellations. If you can get a C1, that's cool. If you can't, don't worry about it. The other ones are nice to have. I don't think it's mandatory for her to perform well. All right. Hopefully this video was super helpful to you in thinking about how you're going to build Klee. And if you liked it, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel for more content. We'll go into our Klee build in the next video. And of course, we're always streaming live on Twitch from Sunday to Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern into the morning. Yeah, and that's going to do it for me. I hope you guys continue to have a great time playing Genshin Impact. And thank you so much for stopping by. See you next time.